Everyone in Dune is obsessed with one thing. The Bene Gesserit need it. The Spacing Guild can't function without it. The Emperor stays in power because of it. Atreides goes to war over it. The Fremen worship it. And the entire economy of the known universe, every loaf of bread, every starship, every empire, depends on it continuing to flow. It's called spice. And it's a drug, but that's not really what it is. Let me explain. Welcome to the Understory. If you've ever finished a movie or a book and wanted to keep talking about it, that's what this channel is for. Mostly sci-fi and fantasy, but sometimes whatever's worth taking a closer look at. If that sounds like you, hit subscribe. I have new videos coming out every week, and consider hitting the like button. Now let's get into the video. The full name is Spice Melange. In French, that just means mixture or blend. Frank Herbert was always playing with linguistic roots, and this one's a hint that spice is more complicated than it looks. Physically, it's a fine, powdery substance. Reddish-brown when piled in the desert, orange when it gases up into the air. There are passages in the later books where Herbert describes it glowing faintly blue under certain lighting, which becomes important later when we get to what it does to people's eyes. It tastes like cinnamon, mostly, though characters in the books note that the taste is never exactly the same twice. Herbert called it an acquired flavor reaction, meaning the body itself is interpreting the taste based on what it's getting from the substance. If your body is healing, spice tastes one way. If you're starving, it tastes another. The flavor is your nervous system reading the chemistry. It can be eaten, drunk, smoked, brewed into beer, processed into paper, plastic, even explosives. On Arrakis, where almost nothing else grows, the Fremen build their entire material culture around it. Spices in the food, in the fabric, in the fuel. But none of that is why it matters. Spice exists in exactly one place in the universe, the desert planet Arrakis. And the reason for that is one of the strangest pieces of world building Herbert ever wrote. Spice is a byproduct of the sandworm life cycle, specifically the larval stage. Before sandworms grow into the massive creatures that destroy spice harvesters, they exist as small organisms called sand trout. Sand trout burrow into the deep desert and seek out water, which on Arrakis is incredibly rare. When they find a pocket of water, they insist around it, sealing it off underground. What happens next is essentially a chemical reaction. The trapped water mixes with the sand trout's biological excretions deep below the surface in extreme heat and pressure. Over time, this produces a fungal pre-spice mass, and the carbon dioxide it generates eventually causes the whole thing to explode upward through the sand. Anyone too close gets killed. The pre-spice mass dries in the sun, and that's spice. The reason it can only be made on Arrakis is that the entire production process requires sandworms, and sandworms only exist on Arrakis. They can't be transported, they can't be tamed, they can't be replicated. Multiple factions across the galaxy spent thousands of years trying to synthesize spice or recreate the conditions of Arrakis somewhere else, and none of them ever fully succeeded. So the most valuable substance in the universe exists in exactly one place, requires a giant predatory worm to produce, and has to be harvested under constant threat of being eaten. That's the deal humanity made. So what does it mean to people? Well, 3 things basically. First, it extends life. Regular spice users live 2 to 3 times longer than normal humans. Their immune systems are stronger. They heal faster. The wealthy of the Imperium become essentially immortal as long as they keep taking it. Secondly, it's wildly addictive. Once you've been on spice, going off it is fatal. The withdrawal kills you. So the Imperium is built on a population of permanently addicted nobles, traders, and bureaucrats who literally cannot stop using. Third, and this is where it gets interesting, spice changes the mind. Long-term users developed heightened awareness, sharper senses, better memory, and in certain people with certain training and in high enough doses, spice unlocks something else: prescience, the ability to see the future. Now, not all users get this. Most just live longer and feel sharper. But for the rare individuals whose minds can handle it, primarily members of the Bene Gesserit or the Spacing Guild, spice opens a door to perceiving time itself. There's one more side effect worth mentioning, because it's the most visible. Heavy long-term spice users have eyes that turn blue on blue. The whites of the eyes go deep blue and the irises go even deeper. The Fremen call it the eyes of Ibad. It's a sign of how saturated their bodies are with the substance. By the time you see those eyes, the person is fundamentally not human, at least not in the same way anymore. They're chemically different. The Bene Gesserit are a sisterhood of women who've spent thousands of years training their minds and bodies to superhuman levels. They're advisors, manipulators, breeders of bloodlines, and the closest thing the Imperium has to a hidden government. Their highest right is the spice agony. A sister consumes a lethal dose of concentrated spice, specifically the water of life, harvested from a drowned sandworm, and through training transmutes the poison inside her own body. If she survives, she becomes a Reverend Mother, and she gains access to something called other memory, the consciousness of every female ancestor in her bloodline, stretching back tens of thousands of years. That's the trick of the Bene Gesserit. They're not just trained, they're carrying the memories of thousands of women in their heads, and they've got there through spice. Now, the Spacing Guild controls all interstellar travel, and they have a specific reason for that monopoly. 10,000 years before the events of Dune, humanity fought a war against thinking machines, the Butlerian Jihad, and they won. Computers were banned permanently. So when humanity needed to travel between stars, they had a problem. You can't fold space safely without a way to predict obstacles. And without computers, you need a mind that can do that work. Enter the Guild Navigators. Humans who consume so much spice over their lifetime that they mutate. They become fish-like, eyeless, suspended in tanks of orange spice gas. And they develop a limited form of prescience, enough to see safe paths through folded space and steer ships across the galaxy. This is the Guild's monopoly. Without spice, no navigators. Without navigators, no interstellar travel. And without interstellar travel, the Imperium collapses. And the Guild charges accordingly. So that's what spice is: a drug, a longevity treatment, a prescience trigger, a navigation tool, and the entire foundation of an interstellar economy. But here's what spice actually is, thematically. Frank Herbert wrote Dune in the early 1960s. He was reading about the Middle East, about oil, about how a single resource found in a single region, run by a single people who knew the land, became the lever that controlled the entire industrialized world. Spice is oil. Arrakis is the Middle East. The great houses fighting over it are the colonial powers. The Fremen are the indigenous population whose religion and knowledge make them dangerous to outsiders who want to extract the resource without understanding the land. That's the first layer, and it's a layer most people pick up on. But there's a second layer that's actually more interesting. Spice in Dune is what every civilization eventually finds. The thing that makes everything possible and therefore the thing no one can question. Empires don't fall because of bad leaders. They fall because the resource their power was built on became contested. The Romans had grain, the British had coal, we have oil, the Imperium had spice. When Paul said, "He who controls the spice controls the universe," he's not talking about a magic powder. He's talking about leverage. He's talking about the single point of failure that an entire civilization has been pretending isn't there. And the most chilling thing about Dune, across all the books, is that the people who control the spice never get to feel safe, because everyone else in the universe is also trying to control the spice. The thing that gives you power also makes you a target. And that's why Paul's victory at the end of the first book isn't really a victory. He's just the next person, sitting on top of the same trap. The spice is still flowing. The Imperium still depends on it. And eventually, someone is going to come for him. So that's spice, the most valuable substance in the universe, made by giant worms, controlled by people who have turned themselves into fish to navigate space, addictive enough to kill anyone who quits, and ultimately just a metaphor for every resource every empire has ever fought a war over. If you want a full breakdown of what's coming in Dune Part 3, I've got a longer video on the channel covering every detail of the trailer. Subscribe for more Dune, sci-fi, fantasy, and finding the stories underneath them all. And I'll see you in the next one.